Hi, good day. This is me again, Richie S. Ramirez, and in this video, I will take you into the journey of extending X-bar theory to functional categories. In the last chapter, we look at the refinement of our phrase structure rules that not only accounted for intermediate structure, but also generalized pattern across categories. This refinement is X-bar theory, or the generalized X-bar rules. In 1a, the specifier rule tells that every phrase that is represented by XP must have a bar level of the same category within it. That is represented by X apostrophe, optionally preceded by another phrase that is represented by YP. In the phrase the basketball, the specifier precedes the head. In 1b, we can see that adjunct can be on either side, like in this phrase. In 1c, the complement rule says that complements are on the right, that is, they follow the head, like what we can see in this phrase. This chapter, we will look at determiners and specifiers and propose a new category that fits the X-bar theory. A determiner phrase, or DP, we will see that determiners are not specifiers. Instead, we'll claim that the specifier position is used to mark a particular grammatical function, that of subjects. In the X-bar rules in number 1, you'll note that the only obligatory element is the head. In this chapter, for lack of a better place to put them, we put determiners like the, a, that, this, those, and this in the specifiers of NPs. This, however, violates one of the basic principles underlying X-bar theory. One thing to note about determiners is that they are typically heads. Normally, there can be only one of them in an NP. This isn't true cross-linguistically, but for now, let us limit ourselves to English. And this is presented in the phrase in number 3, the, that, and book. In other words, they don't seem to be phrasal. If our requirement says that the only thing that is in the phrase in an NP is the N itself, then we have a problem. One solution, perhaps not obvious, to this is a claim that the determiner is not actually inside the NP. Instead, it has its own phrasal projection. This was the first proposed by Agni 1987. Determiners, in this view, are not part of the NP. Instead, the NP is the complement to determiner head. This solution solves the theoretical problem of the non-phrasality of the D, but we still need empirical evidence in its favor. One piece of evidence comes from the behavior of genitive or possessive NPs. There are two kinds of possessive NPs. The first is of less interest to us. This one is often called the free genitive or off genitive. The free genitive uses the preposition of to mark the possessive relation between the two NPs. More important in terms of evidence for DP is the behavior of the other kind of possessive, the construct or apostrophe S genitive. 6ABC would show the construct or apostrophe S genitive is being used. There are a couple of important things to note about this construction. Notice first that the apostrophe S marker appears after the entire possessor NP. For example, it attaches to the whole phrase, the man standing over there, not just to the head man. This means that apostrophe S is not a suffix. Instead, it seems to be a small word indicating possession. Next, note that it is in complementary distribution with determiners 8. In 8a, the building's the roof compared to the roof of the building. In 8b, the panther's the coat compared to the coat of the panther. In 8c, the man standing over there's the hat compared to the hat of the man standing over there. Unlike the of genitive, the apostrophe S genitive does not allow both the nouns to have a determiner. In other words, apostrophe S and determiners are in complementary distribution. As in other domains of linguistics, when two items are in the complementary distribution, they are instances of the same thing. This is clearly illustrated in the tree found in number 9. Now, let's look at the tree for number 8c, which is shown in number 10. That is, the man standing over there's the hat. Notice that in the tree illustrated in 10, there is a specifier of DP, filled by DP2. Note further that this specifier is phrasal, that is projects to an XB, which means that it meets with our requirement that all non-head material be phrasal. The possessor DP2, the man standing over there, sits in the specifier of DP1, which is headed by apostrophe S. So, apostrophe S follows the whole thing. Notice that with our old theory, in which determiners are specifiers of NP, there is no way that all to generate apostrophe S as a determiner and to also have the possessor NP preceding it. Because, take a look on the tree illustrated in number 11. The X-bar rules don't provide any place to attach this predeterminer NP if determiners are specifiers. Now, you might ask if by moving determiners out of the specifier, we have completely destroyed the empirical justification for the specifier rule. Actually, we haven't. Again, if you look closely at the tree in number 10, we still have a specifier. It just isn't D1. Instead, it is the DP possessor DP2. So, we are done with the first segment of the presentation. So as a summary, let's take a look on this interim summary part where we look at the different important or resilient points discussed in the first segment. First, we have the determiner is not actually inside the NP. It has its own phrasal projection, based on the idea of Abney 1987. Then we have DP hypothesis, which tells that determiners are not part of the NP. Instead, The NP is the complement to the determiner head. Also, we are exposed to the different evidence for DP. First, we have the genitive or possessive, and it's two kinds of NPs, which are free genitive or of genitive. Then, the use of apostrophe S marker is in complementary distribution with determiners. Moving on, let's have now the clause types. Now, what is a clause? A clause is essentially a subject, usually a DP that has the property indicated by the predicate. This is what the clause is about. In a predicate phrase, or a group of words that assign a property to the subject. The most obvious kind of clause is the simple sentence. In the following examples, the subject is indicated in italics and the predicate phrase is in bold. So we have in 12a, which we have the sentence, "The boy ran," which obviously that the subject here is the boy and the predicate phrase is the word ran. In 12b, Howard is a linguistics student. We say here also that the subject is Howard and the predicate phrase is linguistics student. A clause that stands on its own is called a root, matrix, or main clause. Sometimes, however, we can find examples of clause within clauses. Examples of these are seen below. In 13a, Peter said that Danny danced. 13b, Bill wants Susan to leave. In each of these sentences, there are two clauses. In sentence 13a, there is the clause that Danny danced, which is inside the root clause. Peter said that Danny danced. While in 13b, we have the clause Susan to leave, which has the subject Susan and the predicate phrase to leave. This is contained within the main clause, Bill wants Susan to leave. Both of these clauses within clauses are called embedded clauses. Another name for embedded clause is subordinate clause. The clause containing the embedded clause is still called the main or root clause. Now, using the TP and CP rules we developed in Chapter 3, the structure of a root clause containing an embedded clause is given in the illustrated tree in number 14. Now, let's take a look at this tree. For the sentence, Peter said that Danny danced. Now, looking to the tree presented here, you will notice that our main clause is the TP, which is the root of whole sentence, while our embedded clause is the TP that Danny danced. Now, within each clause, we can identify the various verbs, and they are the verbs said and the verb dance. Another thing is the two verb phrases are the predicate phrases. And our two DPs are the subjects, which are Peter and Danny. In addition to the distinction between main and embedded clauses, we can also distinguish among specifier. complement, and adjunct clauses. Here are some examples of complement clauses. In 15a, Heidi said that Art loves peanut butter. In 15b, Colin asked if they could get a mortgage. These complement clauses, that Art loves peanut butter and if they could get a mortgage, are sisters to the verb and thus complements. Clauses can also appear in adjunct positions. Relative clauses are one example of adjunct clauses. That is illustrated in the sentence number 16. The man I saw get into the cab robbed the bank. The relative clause in 16, I saw get into the cab, modifies the head man. Specifier clauses are ones that serve as the subject of a sentence, which is clearly seen below in 17a and b. A. People selling their stocks caused the crash of 1929. 17b. For Mary to love that poor is a travesty. We could see here that people selling their stocks and for Mary to love that poor are the subject of the sentence, and they are actually called the specifier clauses. To summarize, we have two basic kinds of clauses, main and embedded. Embedded clauses are contained with the main clauses. Further, there are three types of embedded clauses: specifier clauses, complement clauses, and adjunct clauses. This is summarized in the following table. There's another way of binding up the clause type pi. We class clauses into two groups depending upon whether they are tense or not. Clauses with predicates that are tense are sometimes called the tense clauses, but you may more frequently find them called finite clauses. Clauses without a tense verb are called tenseless or non-finite clauses, or sometimes also infinitival clauses. Now let's take a look on the sentences in number 19. In 19a, I said that Mary signed my yearbook. This is actually a tense or finite. It's because we can see here that past tense of the verb signed. In 19b, I want Mary to sign my yearbook. This is tenseless or non-finite. It's because obviously the clause uses the infinite type of design, which is to sign. There are a number of tests for distinguishing finite from non-finite clauses. These tests are taken from Radford, 1988. The embedded clause in sentence 20a is tense. The one in 20b is untensed. One way to tell if a clause is finite or not is to look for agreement and tense morphology on the verb. These include the s ending associated with the third person nouns he eats, and the past tense suffixes like ed. The above examples in number 20 don't show any such suffixes. However, if we change the tense to the past, differences emerge. As you can see in 21a and b, 21a I know you ate asparagus. This is finite clauses or has finite clauses. In 21b, I've never seen you eat asparagus. This is non-finite. Finite clauses allow past tense morphology, the ate form of the verb eat. Non-finite clauses don't. The same effect is seen if you change the person of the subject in the embedded clause. Third-person subjects trigger the S ending. This is allowed only in finite clauses. This is actually seen in 22a and b. In 22a, I know he eats asparagus, containing the finite clauses or finite clause. In b, I've never seen him eat asparagus. He's having a non-finite clause. The case on the subject of the noun is often a giveaway for determining whether or not a clause is finite. Case refers to the notions nominative and accusative introduced in Chapter 1. This is repeated here. So, that is clearly seen in the table presented in number 23, where we have the different cases of pronouns, the nominative, accusative, and anaphoric case. If the clause is finite, then a subject pronoun will take the nominative case form. Given in number 24, I know he eats asparagus. That's finite clause. If the clause is non-finite, then the subject will take the accusative form. Like what we are seeing now in 25, I've never seen him eat asparagus. That is non-finite. One test that works most of the time, but is not as reliable as others, is to see if the subject is obligatory. If the subject is obligatory, then the clause is finite. If the subject is optional or is not allowed at all, then it is non-finite clause. We have these sentences in 26a and b. In 26a, I think that he eats asparagus compared to I think that eats asparagus is with finite clause. In 26b, I want him to eat asparagus compared to I want to eat asparagus is with non-finite clause. Another way to tell if a clause is finite or not is by looking at the complementizer. The complementizer for is only found with non-finite clauses. By contrast, that and if are only found if tense clauses. Now look at the sentences in 27a and b. They are having if and that. That's why they are called finite clause. I wonder if he eats asparagus. If. I think that he eats asparagus. That. While on the other hand, 27c and d, in C, for him to eat asparagus is travesty. In D, I ask for him to eat the asparagus. These two sentences having the non-finite clauses. As a final test, we can note that finite and non-finite clauses take different kinds of T elements. The T in tense clauses can contain auxiliaries and modals like will, can, must, may, should, shall, is, and have. By contrast, the only auxiliary allowed in non-finite clauses is the word to. Now take a look on the sentences found in 28. In 28a, I think he will eat asparagus contains the modal will, and that is finite clause. In 28b, I want him to eat asparagus compared to I want him will eat asparagus. So this is a sentence containing non-finite clause. Now, let us summarize the discussion we had so far in this segment or in this part. You see, we've been looking at the number of important points and important terms here in describing clauses and its types. As we have said, that clause has subject plus predicate phrase. And there are two types of clauses. We have embedded and root or main. Now under embedded, we have the three types: the specifier, adjunct, and complement. Also, the types of verbal. We have tense or finite versus untense or non-finite. In terms of finiteness, we have the inflection, the case, the C or complementizers, and T or tense of the verb.
That would be all for extending X-bar theory to functional categories. Thank you for listening. Till next time.